Why you got Sack and Juvie tatted on you? They not dead. I wouldn't tat nobody on me that's not dead. 2 days after that, these boys dead.
Well, it just which one were you close with?
Both of them. Every last one of them.
YNW Melly's case just took a shocking turn after a close associate reportedly came forward with never-before-seen footage. The internet is in a frenzy, and people are questioning everything they thought they knew about that night. This new development has sparked intense debate and could potentially change the entire narrative of the case. The recently surfaced videos, which appeared in November 2025, reportedly feature Jacobe Mills, someone who was said to be close to the situation that night. These recordings don't show the actual crime, but instead reveal raw, unfiltered interrogation footage. And according to many online, this is the most detailed inside look we've had so far into the events surrounding the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie. The internet is going crazy over what's being said, what's being hinted at, and what may have been left out of the official story. If this footage is verified, it could bring new questions, and possibly new answers. Let's break down what this could really mean.
I already know. My dead and gone. I already know what y'all here for.
Well, it just which one were you close with?
Both of them. Every last one of them.
Did you grow up with them?
Every last one of them.
This footage is getting so much attention because Jacobe Mills was reportedly present that night, riding in the red vehicle that followed the Jeep where the incident allegedly occurred. This isn't just secondhand information or online rumors. It's being presented as first-hand testimony from someone who was close to the situation, knew the people involved, and claims to have seen the events unfold from the inside. To understand why this is creating such a massive response online, we need to revisit the foundation of this case that has kept the hip-hop world and the public interested for over 6 years. Back on October 26, 2018, two rising artists, Anthony YNW Sack Chaser Williams and Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr., were found unresponsive in a Jeep Cherokee that arrived at Memorial Hospital Miramar. YNW Melly, whose real name is Jamel Demons, was not just someone from the same area. He was part of the same YNW collective, a group that had been building momentum together in Florida's music scene. By all accounts at the time, these weren't enemies. They were considered close friends. The original story stated that Cortland YNW Bortland Henry drove the victims to the hospital after they were hit during what was described as a drive-by shooting. At first, it appeared to be another tragic case of young lives lost to street violence. However, as investigators began looking deeper, inconsistencies started to surface. According to court documents and forensic reports, the evidence did not fully match the original claim of a drive-by attack. Autopsy and trajectory analysis suggested that the shots came from inside the vehicle rather than from outside. Investigators also stated that the angles of entry were consistent with someone seated inside the Jeep. According to the prosecution, on the night of October 26th, around 1 a.m., a group of 8 people were at New Era Recording Studio in Fort Lauderdale. That in itself wasn't unusual. Artists often work late into the night. But according to statements later discussed in interviews and recordings, the energy in the room was described as tense and unusual. By around 3:19 a.m., the group reportedly left the studio and split into 2 vehicles. One group left in a red Mitsubishi SUV, including Jacobe Mills, while the other group left in a gray Jeep Cherokee, driven by Cortland Henry with Williams, Thomas, and Melly also in the vehicle. Surveillance cameras showed both vehicles initially taking similar routes along I-95 and other highways. But at one point, the 2 vehicles split up. The red SUV was captured entering a gated community where some members of the group were staying. The Jeep, however, did not appear on that same camera footage. Cell phone data, as later presented by investigators, indicated that the Jeep traveled toward a remote area closer to the Everglades. Prosecutors allege that this is where the fatal incident took place, around 4:02 a.m. What raised even more questions was the lack of evidence along Miramar Parkway, where the drive-by was said to have happened. According to reports, investigators found no shell casings, broken glass, or road damage that would support that version of events. Medical examiners also testified that the injuries consistent with an outside shooting were post-mortem, meaning they occurred after death. The prosecution argued that an attempt was made to stage the scene to resemble a random drive-by incident. Messages and social media activity were also brought into the case, including Instagram messages that were interpreted by authorities as potentially incriminating. Additionally, information about possible gang affiliations was referenced during proceedings. The first trial ended in a mistrial in July 2023 due to a hung jury. Since then, the case has experienced numerous delays, and a retrial is currently scheduled for January 2027. Melly has remained incarcerated throughout this period without a final conviction, while his co-defendant, Cortland Henry, accepted a plea deal in October 2025 on accessory-related charges. This is why the newly resurfaced interrogation footage involving Jacobe Mills has caused such a huge reaction online. Mills, also known as Cortez Teasy in some circles, is reportedly related to Henry and was present that night in the other vehicle. The recordings were originally made in early 2019, long before many details of the case became public. That timing is what has people paying attention, because it suggests he may have been speaking before widespread media narratives shaped public opinion. The fact that this footage surfaced in November 2025, just as the retrial preparations are underway, has led to intense speculation. Some believe it could influence public perception. Others think it may be tied to ongoing legal action behind the scenes. Reactions across the hip-hop community and social media have been extreme. Some see this as critical new information. Others question the motives behind the statements. Throughout the interrogation, Mills reportedly insisted that he wasn't trying to betray anyone and claimed he was just telling his side of the story. However, the level of detail he provided raised serious questions about how this information could impact the case. In the interrogation, Mills reportedly walked investigators through the night, step by step, starting with the studio session. He described a tense atmosphere, people being exhausted, and rising tension between certain individuals. According to him, arguments over respect, money, and control had been building for some time, and that night felt different from the start. Whether this footage will actually affect the outcome of the retrial remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. With these recordings now public, the discussion around the YNW Melly case has entered a new and even more intense phase. And this is just the beginning.
Yeah, he pulled that gun on me.
Saying Kobe pulled a gun on her?
Yep, 5:30 that morning. She called out of work and she called. Wait, stop.
And you really
stop.
can't even tell Courtney. I know what.
Yeah, don't say it. Don't say it.
That's what she told Mariah too, because that's what Mariah told me. Jamie just called me at 8 and told me.
Melly called her at like 5:30 that morning.
This brings us to one of the most persistent rumors that has surrounded this case for years: alleged financial disputes within the group. According to claims made in the leaked audio, there were serious disagreements regarding a record deal that was reportedly worth several $100,000. It's been said that Anthony Sackchaser Williams believed he held a leadership position within the YNW collective and felt he was entitled to a significant share of any earnings. Jacobe Mills also provided details about the seating arrangement in both vehicles that night, which he described as an important part of the timeline. According to him, the Jeep contained Cortland Henry as the driver, Sackchaser in the front passenger seat, Jamel Demons in the rear seat behind the driver, and Christopher Juvie Thomas seated behind Sackchaser. Mills stated that he was in the red vehicle with other members of the group. He also claimed that he initially considered getting into the Jeep, but for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he chose not to. Whether that was intuition or coincidence, he suggested that moment stood out to him later, as if something felt off about that decision. Mills went on to say that weapons were allegedly collected from the studio before the group left, and that one individual may have been carrying a bag that could have contained a firearm. Prosecutors have used details like this to support their theory that the incident was planned rather than the result of a spontaneous argument. After arriving at the residential area, Mills claimed the group waited outside for some time before being able to enter, and most people eventually went to sleep. Around 4 a.m., he says his mother received a disturbing phone call warning that the group was in danger. While the source of that call is unknown, the timing has raised additional questions and added to the mystery surrounding that night. Mills also described receiving multiple missed calls from members of the other vehicle, including a large number of calls directed toward the group's videographer. He interpreted this as a sign that something serious had occurred. One of the most controversial claims from Mills was that he later saw Jamel Demons on a video call and felt that his emotional reaction didn't seem genuine. He claimed the behavior felt staged at the time. It's important to note that this is purely his personal interpretation and not a proven fact. However, that claim has fueled heavy debate online. Mills also stated that he later saw Demons at another location, wearing different clothes than earlier in the night, which sparked speculation about a possible clothing change. Similar details were reportedly brought up by witnesses during earlier court proceedings. In another major claim, Mills alleged that the next morning, members of the group went looking in nearby wooded areas and came across a handgun that appeared to have blood on it. He said that someone later took the weapon away. He also claimed they searched for a second firearm but could not locate it. This stands in contrast to the investigation, which never officially recovered a murder weapon. Interestingly, throughout his statements, Mills repeatedly insisted that Cortland Henry was not the person who committed the actual violence. He described him as someone who was not built for that type of act. Some speculate that this perception may be part of why Henry later accepted a plea deal rather than continuing to trial on more serious charges. Mills then moved into speculation about possible motives and whether the situation was a setup. He even made vague comparisons to other well-known cases in hip-hop history. He also hinted at the idea that other artists may have had knowledge of rising tensions within the group. However, it's important to emphasize that these statements are purely speculative and not supported by confirmed evidence. At this point, nothing Mills has said in the leaked footage has been officially verified in court. Everything remains allegation, interpretation, or personal opinion. What is undeniable, however, is that his statements have reignited global attention around this case and added new layers of mystery, suspicion, and debate. Whether this information will play any role in the upcoming retrial remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: this case is far from over.
The remix of Melly song, listen to that. What he said, bust a nigga head, something.
Mills later questioned how NBA YoungBoy appeared to know so much about the situation, referencing certain social media posts and an alleged remix that he claimed contained inside details. However, it's important to slow down here and be very clear. Extensive online searches have not confirmed the existence of this remix, and there has been no official investigation or legal connection between NBA YoungBoy and the incident. The significance is not in proof, but in the fact that Mills even mentioned his name at all. There had reportedly been tension between different crews at the time, and in the world of hip-hop, rivalries can sometimes blur the line between rumor and reality. Whether NBA YoungBoy had any knowledge of what happened or not remains completely unverified, but the mere mention of his name shows how wide and complicated the situation had become. What makes Mills' statements more intriguing to many people is how some of the details he mentioned back in 2019 were not public knowledge at the time, yet later came out through official channels. He claimed that Juvie suffered a specific hand injury, something that wasn't publicly confirmed until years later, when legal documents and images were released. He also correctly referenced the location where Melly was allegedly picked up afterward, which later aligned with cell phone data presented in court. These consistencies have caused some people to view Mills as a credible insider, while others still question his intentions. Throughout the interrogation footage, Mills repeatedly insists that he is not trying to betray anyone. He claims his only goal was to help his friends and protect himself. At one point, he even expresses fear that his family could be harmed for his cooperation with authorities, showing how much pressure and anxiety surrounded everyone connected to this case. At the end of the day, these are still one-person statements made under intense circumstances. They have not been fully verified in court, and they don't automatically equal guilt or innocence for anyone involved. What they do show is just how complex, layered, and dangerous this situation had become, far beyond just music or friendship. And as the retrial approaches, questions like these are only getting louder.
If we done jumped in front of them, it was already too late. We can't try to pull over and get back behind them.
Think about it for a moment. How do you find 12 truly impartial jurors when half the internet has already watched Mills lay out exactly what he claims happened that night? Defense attorneys are almost certainly going to try to suppress this footage and may even request a change of venue, because selecting a fair jury after something like this goes viral is close to impossible. But here's where it gets even more interesting from a strategic standpoint. Some people believe these leaks could be tied to the ongoing civil wrongful death lawsuits, where the victims' families are seeking financial damages. In civil court, the rules around evidence are looser, and the burden of proof is much lower than in a criminal trial. That could explain why Fredo Bang has now been pulled into depositions in the civil case. Even though he wasn't directly involved in what happened that night, Mills claimed that Melly went to his house afterward, and that single mention has now drawn Bang into the legal process. This development has even caught the attention of major figures like 50 Cent, showing just how much of the hip-hop world is watching this case unfold. Now let's shift to the street politics behind all of this, because that's where things become even more complicated. Leaked audio from Sack Chaser's family, recorded the day after the murders, suggests there were serious internal tensions within the YW crew. In the recording, family members talk about financial conflicts and claim that Sack Chaser was trying to stop Melly from signing what they described as a dangerous or corrupt deal.
Yeah, my Dead and gone. I already know what y'all here for.
Well, it just which one were you close with?
Both of them. Every last one on.
Did you grow up with them?
Every last one on.
Real talk. This footage is hitting different because Mills.
The reaction to these leaks has been absolutely wild across social media. Hip-hop personalities like DJ Academics have been breaking down the footage, while fans on platforms like Reddit and Twitter are debating whether Mills is a credible witness or just another person trying to save himself by cooperating with authorities. What makes this situation even more interesting is how it connects to the larger themes of loyalty and betrayal in hip-hop culture. In the streets, there's an unspoken rule. You don't work with law enforcement, no matter what. But when your friends are murdered and you start suspecting people close to you, those rules begin to blur very quickly. In this final part, we're going to explore what all of this could mean for Melly's upcoming trial, how it's impacting others within the hip-hop community, and the wider implications for street culture in the music industry. Because this story goes far beyond just a single case, it's about loyalty, money, power, and the dangerous consequences when those things collide. The fallout. How this changes everything for hip-hop. We've now reached the final chapter of this intense story, and the ripple effects from these leaked videos are spreading like wildfire. This is no longer just about one crime. It's about how these revelations are reshaping discussions around snitching, loyalty, street politics, and the music industry as a whole. Mills's statements are creating shockwaves on multiple levels legally, culturally, and within the industry itself. Let's start with the legal implications. These leaks dropped right as preparations for Melly's trial were heating up, and that timing doesn't seem accidental. Legal experts believe the footage itself may not be allowed in court due to questions around authentication and hearsay. However, the fact that millions of people have already watched it online creates a serious problem when it comes to selecting an unbiased jury. Public perception has already been influenced, and that alone could impact the entire trial process.
Like DeAndre told somebody, everything Melly get, I get half.
We do.
You hear that? He said he do. He just said Juvie and DeAndre, Sack Chaser, are YNW, and Sack Chaser is supposed to get half of everything.
Think about it for a moment. How do you find 12 truly impartial jurors when half the internet has already watched Mills lay out exactly what he claims happened that night? Defense attorneys are almost certainly going to try to suppress this footage and may even request a change of venue, because selecting a fair jury after something like this goes viral is close to impossible. But here's where it gets even more interesting from a strategic standpoint. Some people believe these leaks could be tied to the ongoing civil wrongful death lawsuits, where the victims' families are seeking financial damages. In civil court, the rules around evidence are looser, and the burden of proof is much lower than in a criminal trial. That could explain why Fredo Bang has now been pulled into depositions in the civil case. Even though he wasn't directly involved in what happened that night, Mills claimed that Melly went to his house afterward, and that single mention has now drawn Bang into the legal process. This development has even caught the attention of major figures like 50 Cent, showing just how much of the hip-hop world is watching this case unfold. Now let's shift to the street politics behind all of this, because that's where things become even more complicated. Leaked audio from Sack Chaser's family, recorded the day after the murders, suggests there were serious internal tensions within the YW crew. In the recording, family members talk about financial conflicts and claim that Sack Chaser was trying to stop Melly from signing what they described as a dangerous or corrupt deal.
He had ran to the stairway because he heard me talking crazy, like, man, what the f going on? He looking lost, like, what's going on, bro? I say, man, go see a Sack in his room, bro.
Think about it. How do you find 12 impartial jurors when
Reports that Melly's mother called out of work early that morning have fueled speculation that she may have known something significant had happened before the situation became public. While this detail has been widely discussed online, it has never been officially confirmed or connected to any charges. Still, it adds another layer of mystery to an already complex timeline. Mills also raised questions about NBA Youngboy, suggesting that his knowledge of the incident seemed unusually detailed based on social media posts and an alleged remix. However, no evidence of that remix has ever been found, and there is no official link between Youngboy and the case. Even so, his name being mentioned highlights just how interconnected and tangled relationships in the hip-hop world can be. Past conflicts, alliances, and industry tensions often blur together, creating narratives that quickly spiral online. Then there is the issue of snitching. Throughout his interrogation, Mills repeatedly denied that he was cooperating for personal gain, saying he was simply trying to help his friends and make sense of what happened. Online reactions, however, have been divided and intense. Some see him as a witness. Others label him a traitor. This touches on one of the deepest conflicts in street culture when loyalty to people clashes with loyalty to truth and justice. Mills even expressed fear that his cooperation could put his family in danger, showing the very real personal risks tied to these situations. On a broader level, this case has reopened long-standing conversations about money, power, and pressure in the music industry. Allegations of financial disagreements have led many to question how success, contracts, and sudden wealth can strain relationships to a breaking point. At the same time, critics argue that young black artists are often judged more harshly in the public eye, while others believe the legal system is simply following the evidence where it leads. Melly has now been in custody for more than 6 years without a final conviction, raising serious questions about due process and the speed of the justice system. Supporters of the prosecution maintain that the complexity of the case justifies the length of the proceedings. Looking ahead to the retrial reportedly scheduled for January 2027, it's clear that these leaks have significantly changed the public narrative. With prior plea deals already on record and new statements from witnesses spreading online, the pressure on both sides has intensified. Beyond the courtroom, what stands out most is the human cost. Mills described Juvie as someone who wanted a different life, a future away from the lifestyle surrounding him. His comments, along with the broader story of fractured relationships, paint a picture of young lives shaped by ambition, loyalty, and tragedy. The spread of these leaked interrogation clips also raises serious ethical questions in the social media age. Should footage taken in legal settings become entertainment? How do we balance public curiosity with the right to a fair trial? These questions don't just apply to this situation, they apply to the future of true crime and hip-hop coverage as a whole. One thing is certain, this case has exposed deep tensions within both street and industry culture involving loyalty, money, fame, and justice. As the world waits to see how it unfolds in court, the story is clearly far from over. If you want to explore more of these in-depth stories, click on any of the videos on screen now.